All right. Good morning, everybody. How's it going? We're doing a conch solo for the first couple minutes. When Rob gets here, we'll do conch duo. Is that how that works? Good morning, Heather. What's up? Today, we're not doing Rule Zero. Both Amos and Brooke got stuck doing some stuff and they weren't able to make it. So, you know, me being myself, I had the free time. So that's what we're doing. Blessed. Hopefully everything sounds good. Hopefully everyone's having a good morning. We're just waiting for good old Rob to get in to talk to us about Mormonism, LDS, all the good stuff. And look at that. The man himself.
What's going on, dude?
Hey. We are now already live, which is good stuff. Couple minutes late, but that is life.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, we're going to, BS about LDS. Does that sound good?
Works for me.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, how are you doing, Rob? What's going on in your neck of the woods?
Just got done making a video for my channel, figuring out what I'm going to write for a blog post for tomorrow. The usual stuff. Basically, life's good. Work is busy as hell because we got Thanksgiving coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Beyond that, it's just been kind of crazy. I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning. I spent the night over at the girl's house, and she had to be to work by 4. And so I left her place, probably about 10 minutes to 4 and came home and just started doing everything I just mentioned.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm coming off of the flu. Most of the symptoms are gone. Still got a cough every once in a while, so get ready for those.
Okay.
Big manly coughs, you know. You're not a real man unless your cough shakes your whole desk, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Especially if you're wearing flannel and holding a lumberjack axe, you know.
Well, yeah, you got to be lumbersexual. That's real masculinity right there.
Oh, yeah. And that's actually something Mormons like, too. They're pretty into the flannels, you know. The Tradcon dad and the lumbersexual have a very big overlapping Venn diagram.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to go first? Just tell me your history of Mormonism. Weren't you like born into it, kind of?
More or less, yeah. I was born in Wyoming, but I was raised in Salt Lake City. And Salt Lake City, for anyone watching, is the LDS capital of the world. Okay. And my parents are LDS, or were LDS, however you want to call it. They're not practicing LDS, but they were raised where they had to go to church. My grandparents made them go. They didn't have a choice in the matter. And that was something that they always wanted to give me. They said, we want to give you a choice, something we never had. But I ended up going to the LDS Church, the ward that was near where I lived. And that's because at that time, and this is back in the 1970s, the majority of the population of Salt Lake is LDS. It still is, but back then it was an even greater population. So the majority of the people I went to school with, the people I grew up with, they're all LDS. And so when in Rome, you do as the Romans. And that's the religion that was bequeathed to me. And I was a good card carrying Mormon kid from the time I was little, like 4 or 5, up till I was probably 12, maybe 13. And then from there is when I fell off the wagon, so to speak, and started walking away from the church and walked away from it in its entirety. Well, I walked away from it, like I said, about 13, but religion, once it's in you, it's hard to get it out of you. And so there was a lot of things that stuck with me well up until probably my mid-30s, I want to say. And it was around that time that I kind of divorced not only the LDS Church, but religion as a whole. I cut clean from all types because I've looked at different religions and what they had to offer and what they were about. And for me, the conclusion was kind of the same across the board. And so I decided, instead of this, where I was not fully divorced from religion as a whole, it caused me a lot of conflict, a lot of anguish, a lot of pain. There was a lot of guilt and shame involved with all of it. And when I finally decided I'm done, period, full stop type of thing, that's when all of that kind of pain, conflict, suffering, anguish, guilt, shame, all that shit went away. And so that was the one thing that I had wished I had done when I was younger was, cut clean of all of it completely and be done. That's the one thing, hey, if you could go back and tell your younger self, that would have been the thing I would have told my younger self. Because that's one area that I think even that young dumbass would have listened to me. So that's kind of my backstory in the sense of when did it all start and when did it end for me, I guess. I want to say something here about the LDS because that is the religion that I know the best, but I think it applies to all religions. I see guys online every now and then, and somebody will pipe up and say something like Islam is red-pilled, or they'll say the LDS are red-pilled. And it's like, no, they are not. There are guys that are red-pilled and are religious, but the religion itself is not red-pilled. And that's, I see it all the time, even now. Before the pandemic hit and we started getting locked down into everything that we're kind of dealing with now, I went out with some guys that I was introduced to by a mutual friend. And these guys were devout LDS men. And they were just coming off of a divorce. And every one of them had the exact same look on their face. We went to the bar, and so you could tell that most of these guys doing the bar thing wasn't part of their routine. They stood out because it's like, yeah, they're kind of like, what am I doing here? What do I even do here? Type of thing. But they all looked stunned. They were all shell-shocked. They all had the deer in the headlights look.
And divorce is even a bigger sin in Mormonism than it is in like evangelical, right?
As far as I know, that's one of the funny things about the LDS. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of, I guess, history about the LDS Church.
Oh yeah.
Now, granted, I'm not. There's other people that are way more knowledgeable than I am about the history and whatnot. And that's because they spent way more time in it than I did. Like I said, I got out of the LDS pretty young. But the LDS Church, as far as the United States goes, when we talk about recognized, organized religion, we're not talking cults and little offshoots and sects and whatnot. We're talking what is known as an official religion, where they have tax exempt status and all of those kind of things that the state bequeaths to them. The LDS religion is a fairly new religion. The only other one that I can think of that is newer than the LDS is Scientology. Okay, so the LDS has only been around since the 1800s. And then there's, I'm sure people can argue it. I don't remember the date when it all came about, but it was
in like the 1820, 30-ish range.
Yeah, something like that.
Joseph Smith was doing his stuff, and then I think the Book of Mormon was like 1845, I want to say.
Yeah, that's
right around there.
Right. It was basically right around as we started gearing up for the Civil War. Okay, so it's a fairly new religion compared to Orthodox, like the Roman Catholic Church or Lutherans or stuff like that. This is a fairly new religion. Okay. The church has had several revisions over the years to their book. The Book of Mormon has been revised a couple of times. And this isn't just for translation to other languages or for typos or whatever. We're talking changing church doctrine. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When the church first started, polygamy was part of the deal, that God told them, you know, practice polygamy, go have multiple wives. Well, that was the church stance. That was the way they looked at it because God said so. And or Heavenly Father, let's call it the proper name here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that changed when the United States outlawed bigamy and polygamy. And so
Yeah.
they changed it. And the convenient answer to it was God told the prophet at the time, and I don't remember who it was because Joseph Smith was already dead. And I think even Brigham Young might have been dead by that time too.
Yeah.
But it was the idea that God basically told the prophet that basically I will be bound by man's laws. And so whatever the law of the land is, then I will adhere to that as well. So whatever man says, then God goes, yep, then I'm gonna, that's what I believe, you know, that's what I enforce as well from the spiritual plane. And that has always kind of sat weird with me, because if God is supposed to be this omniscient, omnipotent, everlasting, that always been there, always will be, without, you know, end, amen type of thing, why is God now bending the knee to man's law? You know, it goes back to kind of my take on things, which is, in my opinion, we were not created in man's image. We created God in ours. And so this kind of ties into that, because they did away with polygamy, at least the mainstream LDS church did. And then later on, even in the 70s, the early 70s, I remember that back then, the only people who could hold power in the church, in the priesthood, were basically white men. Black men and women could not hold the priesthood. Well, they changed their stance on that due to social pressure.
And some lawsuits.
Yeah, exactly. So now people of color, men of color, could hold the priesthood in the LDS church. I know women recently, like within the last 10, 15 years, have kind of rose up and protested and wanted to also have the power of the priesthood. And at least as of right now, that was squashed. There were women who were very vocal about it that got excommunicated for their resistance, their defiance. The church actually kicked them out for it. But that one's just a matter of time, because it's coming. And that's the thing, that when I, you know, going back to my whole, you know, well, the LDS are red pilled. No, they're not. The church itself, the LDS church, is very similar to other forms of Christianity, other than, you know, their belief structure of, you know, who God is and where God came from and why we are here and where do we go after we die. There are obviously some differences there, but it is a form of Christianity. That much I will say, that, yeah, for those that don't know what the LDS is, it is a flavor of Christianity. They believe in this concept.
That's where we're going to have to disagree.
Well,
we'll get into that later, but yeah.
They believe in this entity known as Heavenly Father, that they also call God, and of course his son Jesus Christ. And then they also believe in what they call the Holy Ghost, and that's their Holy Trinity, which to me is very similar to other forms of Christianity. And even the LDS will say that the Book of Mormon is a compendium or a companion to the Holy Bible. But where it gets funny is, to me, it's like, well, if the Holy Bible was first, at least as far as in an age range, you know, that book was around a lot longer before the Book of Mormon was. Wouldn't you put a little more stock and faith and weight in the Holy Bible, where the LDS actually put more stock and faith in the Book of Mormon? The Holy Bible is more of an add-on to the Book of Mormon to them. So
yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But the interesting
none
thing,
of it makes sense, really.
Of course. But it's interesting when you think about, like, and this is usually how Christians differentiate Mormons, is it's a lot similar to like red pill versus purple pill or red pill versus black pill.
Okay. All right.
We use the same vernacular.
Right.
We talk about the same topics, but they don't mean the same thing, right?
I'll agree with that.
Yeah. So the essence of like orthodox, like mainstream Christianity is Jesus is God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the critical point. Jesus is God is number one, and number two is Jesus died for all your sins, and you don't have to do anything for it. It's a gift.
Yeah.
And Mormon breaks both of those.
Yes.
They don't talk about it a lot.
No, it's just implied that you're correct, because with the Mormons, Jesus is the Son of God. He is a separate entity. And you brought up a good one about Jesus died for your sins. Therefore, in a way, you don't really have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
The LDS, they don't believe that at all.
Yeah. Joseph Smith, I believe he says, you're saved by grace after all you do.
More or less. Well, and it is a good point to bring up to that. A lot of Christian faiths, when it comes to baptism, you're usually done like at birth. When you're a baby infant, shortly after you're born, you're baptized, and that's the absolution, from sin type of thing.
Yeah, a good chunk of Christians usually go that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Where the LDS, that doesn't happen until you're 8 years old. When you, in their eyes, are deemed to kind of know the difference between right and wrong. Before that, because the way I was told was, when I got baptized, of course, the ceremony, the ritual of it, it's a big deal. Baptism is a big fucking deal in the church. Same with when you become a deacon, when you become an elder, all the other titles and all the stuff. It's a big deal. There's a lot of weight, a lot of gravitas, a lot of pomp and circumstance and ceremony that goes into all these different levels. Okay. So, but the first major level that anyone goes through in the LDS Church is baptism. Whether you do it at 8 years old, if you've grown up in it, or if you convert over at some point from another faith, baptism is a big to do for them.
Yeah. And not to mention baptism of the dead.
Oh,
which is one of my favorite weird shit, right?
That's how they keep their numbers inflated.
Yeah.
Okay. That one is a practice that is very controversial, because it's the idea that what the LDS kind of believe is that they kind of remind me in a way of a rapture group, that we are the chosen ones, that when Judgment Day comes and everyone is held accountable for all of their sins, it is the LDS that are going to be saved, and everybody else basically is going to be damned. Very similar in a lot of ways to like the Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay. But the difference here is, if you become a member of the Church of Jesus Christ, you can be saved. You still have to walk the line and carry the load. Unlike more Orthodox Christianity, as you say, is that, hey, once you've, taken Jesus in and been baptized, you're good. Okay. This one, you still got to carry the load. But if you are not LDS, in essence, you are not saved. And so what they're doing is and that's another thing that they kind of believe, is there's 3 different kingdoms to heaven. There's the celestial kingdom, the telestial kingdom, and the terrestrial kingdom. Celestial is the highest kingdom ever. That's where God resides. And that's where Jesus resides. And if you have walked the narrow line and did all the things, that's where you too can go. And in essence, you become a god. And now you can create worlds and universes and planets and have people just like what our God or their God did. Okay. The other kingdoms are lesser, but my recollection was, in comparison to Earth, even the terrestrial kingdom, the lowest kingdom of heaven, was way, way, way better than what the suffering and the bullshit that goes on here. And then you have outer darkness, which basically, for lack of better description, the actual definition of outer darkness is the absence of God. There is God's presence is not there at all. Okay. But for the lay person that's trying to make comparisons and say, what's the similarities? What's the differences? Outer darkness is basically hell.
Yeah, it's cold hell, not fire hot hell.
Oh, no. Yeah. No, there's no fire and brimstone with a being that has cloven hooves and horns and a pitchfork type of thing. No. That would be a good way if you're going to use a physical descriptor. It's cold hell. Yeah. But it's basically the absence of God. And in all honesty, from what I recall, the majority of people who go to outer darkness, they're not murderers and pedophiles and genocidal maniacs like certain dictators in our past. They are basically those who have known the truth of God. They have witnessed, the word, so to speak, and they deny it. So like me, for instance, I would be going to outer darkness because I deny it.
Yeah, so. Which is very interesting. I was gonna talk about that. Now that you're in outer darkness, man, that means you, according to the official LDS doctrine, are worse than Hitler.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, even though I've not committed genocide, I've not hurt or molested children or done any kind of major crime against humanity or even my fellow man. Yes, in the eyes of the LDS Church, I am worse than Hitler. Yes.
Because you had special revelation and denied it, right?
Yep, exactly. How they put it? I turned my back on God, basically. Yes.
Look at that. You heathen.
Yes.
How do you live with yourself?
Every day, man, I drink my beer and I enjoy myself.
How could you? That's a brew to drink.
That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, what is it? The lowest level is the terrestrial heaven. And I think that goes to anyone, as far as I remember with Mormonism, anyone that had general revelation, which is just, in general, you were in the earth and could have known. So Hitler still has a chance to be in heaven, and you do not.
Right. Well, and that's going back to the baptism for the dead. Okay, so there's where we start getting into that. Okay, because the people who are saved, according to the LDS, they're on the books. I mean, that's almost the terminology. Your name is written in a book, and that makes you a member of the church. Where if you get excommunicated or you voluntarily resign and you have to contact the church in writing and tell them, take me off the books. Okay, so it's a form of self-excommunication is what it is.
Yeah.
They will take your name off, but that's when, yes, you are going to outer darkness. Okay. Now, a guy like Hitler, as an example, since you brought him up, he never knew about the LDS Church, as far as I know, that Hitler had no idea about it. It didn't, he had bigger things, he had bigger fish to fry back then. So he never even knew about the church, which puts him, as you say, kind of in the terrestrial kingdom. Because he never knew, he was ignorant. He never knew the revelation of God, so to speak, as you call it. Okay. But a baptism for the dead basically grants him entry into heaven is what it does. It makes his soul saved because he's in the terrestrial, but he's not in outer darkness, but it's kind of like a limbo in a way. But once you're baptized as the dead, you're now considered by the LDS Church, you're saved. Okay. The controversy when you get into that is, as an example, you take not just like Hitler, but you take anyone that they had a family member who was very, very pious and devout in their particular faith. Someone who's Jewish, for example, and they were an Orthodox Jew and they lived their whole life doing that, but then they died, for whatever reason, they died. But then here comes the LDS Church comes along and basically finds their name through whatever databases they're looking in. And they baptize that person on behalf of the LDS Church when the family knew that my uncle, Jonah would have never wanted to be an LDS member. Okay. They basically become honorary members of the church without anyone's consent. And that's where you get into a lot of controversy with it because it's like, well, wait a minute. You know, if you believe in something, if you believe in God, whether you're Christian, Jewish, whatever it may be, and another religion comes along and goes, yeah, we're gonna add you to our group now, even though it's after your death, that would cause a lot of people a lot of anger, a lot of anxiety, because it's like, you can't just do that. You know, that is part of free will. You know, we get to choose what we believe or don't believe or whatever. And yet you're coming along and basically taking my ancestor and making them a Mormon. And yeah, I understand your philosophy of, well, you know, we're saving them, you know, because that's what they believe. But what about their beliefs that they had when they were alive? You know, what if they don't buy into the church? That would be like me getting my name off the book, and then 20 years after my death, in theory, and if I had kids or something, the church goes back and baptizes me again. You know, we're putting him back on the book, and it's like, well, wait a minute. My dad did not want to be a member of the church. You can't do that. And they will take it back off the book again, but it usually has to be contested. And it's like, yeah, that ain't right, man. You know, I mean, for me personally, since I'm atheist, I don't believe in God. Whether I'm on one book or not, I don't care. It's like, whatever, dude. It's all just a ritual to me, so I don't give a shit. But I can see where some people would take offense to that based on their beliefs. And that is one of the other, besides polygamy, that is probably one of the most controversial practices that the LDS do, is baptism for the dead.
Yeah. And my favorite part, especially because I'm sure you've been to the Salt Lake City temple, right? Yeah, the big epicenter. This is where they do it.
Yep, the golden calves.
Which is literally like the definition in the Bible of idolatry and effed up stuff, right?
Yep.
The golden calf is the symbol of humans denying God and making up their own shit.
Which in essence,
the Mormons are
exactly
embracing
the
it in their
did.
baptism of the dead. Yeah.
Pretty
So
much.
I think that's freaking hilarious. So yeah, as you guys can see here, that is literally a giant baptismal covered in golden calves. And that's where you baptize the dead against their will.
Yeah, pretty much right there. Yeah. It's interesting, you know, what they believe, what they do. One of the things that I've always had an issue with, as well as, you know, some of the stuff you've brought up that we've already talked about, is the church is a very strong proponent to, if there's criticism like what we're talking about right now, the church would strongly encourage their members to not watch, to not read, to not listen to anything that is critical of the faith. That they don't, you know, oh, you know, that's Satan, you know, that's bad. You're being tempted. Listening to this heathen Rob, you know, he was once, but he's definitely, you know, I am an apostate is what the term is. You know, it is, I am the heretic. Yeah. Because I turned my back, you know, so definitely don't listen to me.
Real quick, though. I was just gonna do Al. Al is
they do not.
Yeah.
They do not actually put bodies in the tub. It is a symbolic thing. What they end up doing is,
I think it's like a relative, right?
It's not even a relative.
Oh,
no,
wow.
It's just two members of the church. There will be I don't remember the term, but it's basically kind of like John the Baptist. It's the one that's dunking you in the water. We'll do that. And then there's another person who is the surrogate or the proxy for the deceased. But there are two members of the church. They put on their clothing, their baptismal clothing. They go out into the tub, and then names are mentioned. You know, there's like another party that is mentioning the names of those that are the deceased. And then the guy dunks the one guy under the water and pulls him back up. And that now is the proxy for the person who is deceased.
Which is almost like, it's almost like demonic possession, but for baptizing.
Kinda, yeah.
You're
Well,
the
and
surrogate,
it's
taking their spirit and baptizing it for them.
correct. Yeah, I just look at it as it's a serious level of live action role playing is kind of
Yeah.
how I see it. But no, they don't actually put a cadaver, a corpse, a body into the tub.
Yeah.
Because there's obviously people that chose cremation. There's people who've been deceased for hundreds of years that
Mhm.
they've been doing this to, that you
Yeah.
wouldn't have much of a body to baptize. So it's all proxy.
Yeah, yeah. Baptism of the dead, there's not really a lot of rules. You can baptize anyone in the dead.
Pretty
right?
much, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, somebody that died in like, the Civil War,
Yep.
you could go baptism of
Absolutely.
the dead them
Absolutely.
today. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's one of those that it's there's enough leeway and latitude that if you really want to wrap your head around this one, not to say that they would do it or that they've thought of it, but just in my take, where there's a lot of leeway, in theory, you could go back and, basically rebaptize Jesus himself. You could go back and baptize John the Baptist. You could go back and baptize Nero. You could go back to, the beginning of time type of thing and baptize anyone you want. And so that's kind of how this works. You could baptize Julius Caesar. Oh, well, he's no longer a Roman who believed in, polytheistic stuff. It's no, he's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He's a Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
So
look at that. So basically, you could just live your life however you want, and as long as your grandson's got your back, you're fine in Mormon world, right?
Sort of, yeah, kind of. I mean, for me, no, because I'm an apostate, because I turned my back. The only way that I could be resaved is I would have to voluntarily go back to the church. I'd have to go back into the fold. Okay. So me walking away and they know that I was a member, where they have a record of that. No, I am damned according to their stance. There is nothing. The only salvation for me is if I voluntarily choose to go back, which it's like, yeah, whatever, I'll be damned. I'm fine. But if you were never a member, like you've never been a member.
Yeah.
Now, in theory, here's where it gets fun too. Okay. Since we are talking about it now, granted, since I'm an apostate, whatever I say holds no weight according to the church. Okay. Because chances are what I'm going to say is going to be critical. But if I was a member in good standing and you and I are talking about it, if you don't go out and convert and like get baptized and all that, your eternal redemption's in jeopardy, because you now know of the word. Okay. The fact that you and I are discussing it, if I was a good member in standing, puts you in jeopardy if you don't join up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good fun. They actually have a lot of interesting requirements, right? So it's not just baptism. They're also very into, you have to go to church and you have to tithe, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The 10% is a law. And in addition to that, that's another thing that I don't like about them and about a lot of religions in general. Yeah. The tithe it's 10%, which is pretty standard. But if you're not paying your tithe, you're a lesser Mormon, basically. You're not a good Mormon. You are a Jack Mormon is the term that's thrown around. Mm-hmm. In addition to the tithe that is required every year, and it's pre-tax. Okay. So it's based off
a couple extra pennies off you, right?
Yeah. It's based off of your gross income, not your net income. Okay. So it's a pre-tax thing that they expect you to pay your 10%. In addition to that, you also have a thing called fast offerings. And this is where the deacons, these are young men that are like 12 years old, will take these little, at least in the past, they were these little blue envelopes that had a couple little circular discs on the back with a piece of string so that you could kind of close it up and keep people from getting into it. And in the fast offering, there was a little card in there that would tell you that you could record, you could write it down, what denomination, what dollar amount you wanted to give to the church. It was a donation, basically, but they called it fast offering. And so these young men would go around, usually on Sunday, and they would knock on your door and they would present you with this little envelope, which basically, if you were a good Mormon, you put money in that envelope and you'd record it for tax purposes and also for the church itself. And everyone had their own little envelope. Okay. It wasn't a generic envelope that, by the end of the day, they had one envelope that was full of money. No. Everyone in the ward had their own envelope. So they knew if Rob was doing fast offerings or not. They knew if Conk was doing fast offerings or not.
Which I never would.
Yeah, because Conk, well, neither did I. But Conk has his own envelope with his own name on it, with a little record sheet in there of how much you've donated every month. Because this was a monthly thing that they would show up once a month and want more money in addition to the 10% tithe. Okay. Now that dollar amount, you could put whatever. You could put pennies. You could put $5, $10, $100, $1,000, whatever you wanted to do. There was no limit to how small, other than you better donate something. Okay. Even if it was literally 2 cents, but they wanted that on top of the 10% tithe. And there was something else they wanted. Ooh. And that was your time. Okay.
All of it.
So, well, most people, from what I've known of other religions, Sunday, the Sabbath, is typically the holy day. And so that's the day you rest from work, but you go and you worship in the house of the Lord, whatever your flavor is. Okay. But Mass or whatever it is typically happens from this time to that time. You might have a couple other things going on, but then once church is out, you go home, you maybe spend some time with your family, whatever you do, but then you get on with your life. You go back to work, you do your thing. Okay. With the LDS, no. Sunday, of course, was the special day of all special days because it is the Sabbath, but they had multiple, God, what's the word? I'm trying to think of what it was called. It's kind of like Mass, but it's not Mass. But they would have multiple times throughout the day where basically church was an all-day event. Okay. So you had as early as like 8 o'clock in the morning for your first session, where, you got to listen to the bishop or the stake president or somebody else. They had something that here's our topic today. And that's what they'd talk about. And so that's what they'd do. And then you'd have a break. And a lot of people would go home at that point. But if you're going to be one of the most devout, no, you came back for round 2 and round 3. Okay. And you would be in church all day long, like almost 12 hours. Yeah. Okay. It doesn't end there though. Okay.
But wait, there's more.
Well, yeah, because one of the big tenets that the LDS faith talks about is they're all about family. They're like, we are all about family. Family's number one to the LDS. Except the thing is, you have pretty much all day at church on Sunday, but then if you're devout, if you're really trying to toe the line, you're doing stuff all throughout the week as well. Okay. You have Relief Society, where it's typically the women, the older women in particular, get together and they talk about whatever. It's, it's not necessarily tied to the church, but the church is always involved in your life. Okay.
Everything. Yeah.
Yes. You have the young men's groups that go on. You have the priesthood going on. You have family home evening. Okay. And also, if you're devout, every day or damn near every day, you're studying scripture. You have family lessons that the church has already printed out, bound together, and given to you. That here's your lesson for Monday. Here's your lesson for Tuesday. Here's your lesson for Wednesday. and you're constantly doing church activities, and you're constantly devoting time to church. Some people actually can work for the church where they get a wage, they get a salary, but a lot of people don't. So in addition to most families, whether you agree with it or not, let's be honest, most families require dual incomes. Okay.
Mhm.
So mom and dad both work, and the kids go to school or daycare or both. LDS families tend to be on the large side. Okay. So you've got some in daycare, you've got some in school. And then when everybody comes home from work and from school, now it's time to do church activities. In addition to, well, the kids have to study for their tests and do their homework. And mom and dad are trying to pay bills on the house and take care of their home, wash the clothes, make the dinners, mow the lawns, all that kind of stuff. But in addition to all the daily life stuff that you do, you now also have church activities. Some of them can be done at home, such as family home evening, but some of them require you to go back to your ward, back to the church that you physically go to, and do whatever activities there. Well, that's on your own dime. You're not being, other than, your eternal salvation, but you're not being compensated for that.
Yeah.
And a lot of families, that kind of stuff puts a lot of pressure on them because they're always doing something with the church.
That's the Mormon name of the game, though, is pressure.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm going to be right back. I'm going to grab another drink real quick.
No problem.
So by all means, keep talking to your people. They look like a really fun bunch. So this is cool.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. We'll see you soon, Rob. So, yeah, a lot of what Rob's saying now definitely checks out with what I've studied and what I've been involved with. I don't know if you guys know my history of Mormonism. I was never a Mormon, but ironically, Mormons were the reason I became a Christian, because I grew up in like little Baptist churches, things like that. And I went away from it in high school, and I kind of cut myself off from my own little Baptist Christian lifestyle. And I was pretty atheist, where I was the cool edgelord online debating Christians and all that kind of stuff. And I really just liked science. And I thought, when you get taught when you're a kid is like science and religion are opposites, which is, not necessarily the case the older you get. But when you're younger, you're always told the opposites. Like, oh, the church tried to mess with Galileo and all those old scientists, and that's why the church is evil and hates science. And I was like, well, science is cool, so screw the church, right? So yeah, I was away for like 4 years, and then I was living in. My family recently moved, and they had their own little. It was a really tiny town I was in. What's up, Rob?
I'm just back. I'm catching you as I'm coming in here. So
yeah,
by all means, continue.
I was just talking about my history with the LDS Church, because I was never a Mormon myself, but I grew up Baptist, and those Protestant, Bible Belty type situations where my earliest church I was in was like, it was a sin for women to wear pants. It wasn't like you're going to hell, but like everyone stared at you at church. You know what I mean?
God, yeah. The LDS are similar to that too. There's some similarities there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we went to those kind of style things. And then in high school, I gave it up. And I thought, I used to always believe religion and science were contradictory, because you always hear the stories of, oh, the church oppressed Galileo and the church did this and all that crap. Therefore, church hates science. Right. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, science is cool. I like physics. I would study like calculus and physics in my free time. Right. And so I said, F that. And I did my atheist edgelord phase, that everyone usually does, where you argue and debate and make fun of Christians online. And then when I was about 18, 19, fresh out of high school, we moved to this tiny town in Colorado, and they had their own little Mormon ward there. And so, within the first couple days of you there, they get that info. And this is something we could bookmark for later. Okay. But, and you touched on it a bit, but the Mormons really have their own special surveillance state, right?
Yes.
Where they know what everyone's doing, and they have info on everyone back in decades and decades.
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll bookmark that soon.
Okay.
But They, usually everybody's like, oh, shut up, Mormons, the two guys doing their missionary work. And
Yeah, the missionaries, the elders. Mhm.
yeah. And I was like, you know what? I know a lot of the Bible, and I'm not a Christian, but I know for sure I'm not a Mormon. I already knew they were separated, so I invited them in to chat.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and at that time we had like a puppy Saint Bernard that was super spazzy, and so they loved hanging out with the dog, and I'd always get him a drink, and then we would sit and talk for like an hour.
Mhm.
And it was me just pointing out all the reasons why I don't think Mormonism's are real Christians. And I would point that out, and they would always be in over their head every time.
Yep.
And so, but they would still come back week by week, because I said, "Yeah, come back next Tuesday. We'll do it again."
Mhm.
They're like, "Yeah, that's awesome." And that's a huge thing with Mormons. If you've got your attention, like they literally can't leave until you force them out, right?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
They got. Anytime someone's willing to talk, they kind of have to, especially when you're in that 18-year-old missionary.
Yeah, when you're
right?
let's talk about that for a minute here.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. Okay. So with the LDS, everything is kind of predestined to a degree. Okay. Going back to when you mentioned pressure.
Mhm.
Okay. That's a great way to describe what goes on a almost daily basis, because here's one of the things. Okay. When you are a member of the church, again, yeah, you're not just saved by the grace of God, by Jesus dying for your sins. Oh no, you got to toe the line. Okay. Well, not only do you have to toe the line, but it's something that starts when you're little. When you're a small child, your parents do it to you because the church did it to them, because their parents did it to them, all the way back and all the way forward. Okay. The church is so predominant in your life, and you are not perfect, and you're constantly being tempted by anything and everything that is not the church itself. And if you're a parent and your kids, their salvation is on you.
Mhm.
Okay. As a parent, if your kids walk off the beaten path or off the narrow path, you failed as a parent in the eyes of the church. Okay. It, like when I'd walked away, my parents obviously didn't care because they were Jack Mormon themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. But my parents in the eyes of the church failed when I walked away. Okay. If I was LDS and I had children, my children's salvation is on my shoulders, not theirs, mine.
Mhm.
Okay. My standing in the church, well, not necessarily in the church. My standing in the church can be great as long as I attend and I pay my tithe and my fast offering. So my standing, I can be what is called temple worthy. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute here too. Okay. But in the eyes of Heavenly Father, God, my children's salvation, they walk away, they rebel, they do whatever they're going to do. That's on me. I am a lesser parent because of that. Talk about guilt and pressure.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's kind of what the LDS believe. So when a devout family has a member of the family decide to walk away, whether it's what I call a soft rebellion, where they're teenagers that screw you, mom and dad, I'm going to do what I want, and they go out and they they party it up, they experiment, they might have premarital sex, they might do some drugs, they might drink a bit, but a lot of them tend to come back to the fold later on after a few years. That's a soft rebellion.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of like the Amish rum Springer.
Kinda,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
kinda.
It's just not like officially sanctioned.
Yeah,
It's
there's no,
expected. Yeah.
it's more, well, kids are gonna be kids,
Mhm.
but yeah, there's no official go out and experience the outer world type of thing like the Amish do. Yeah, there's none of that.
Mhm.
Okay, but there's the soft rebellion and then there's the hard rebellion. And the hard rebellion is the people who not only typically walk away from the church and get their names off the books by their own choice, like I did. they also, in a lot of cases, will walk away from their family as well. Okay. I've seen families get split up because of it, because of course the church, the family and the church want the kids to come back into the fold. Okay. And the kids are like, no, I don't believe this. I don't buy it. It's bullshit, whatever. I'm not doing this. And the kids will walk. And it starts usually as a soft rebellion, but the parents become controlling. I've seen it many times when I was young. A lot of them, I have friends that have nothing to do with their parents, have nothing to do with their families. They went 2,000 miles to get away. Okay. And I don't see that in a lot of other religions, that hard rebellion. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I don't see the frequency of it. Where with this community in the LDS, it's actually kind of common that it's like, I've seen so many kids because the parents refused to accept that maybe they don't want to be LDS. Maybe they don't want to go on a mission. Maybe they're okay with the idea that they're going to be in outer darkness. Maybe they're okay with that. And that doesn't make you a bad parent, but technically in the eyes of the church, yeah, it does. Okay. And image is a lot of things in the church. And I'm not saying that's the religion itself. That's the people. But image is everything, which is why Utah has one of the highest prescription drug abuse rates in the nation. Okay. Everybody's on SSRIs here, basically, because nobody's fucking happy. And yet on the surface, if you were to look at all these little Mormon families, hey, everybody's happy, you know, on the surface. But then you get down into it and you find out their little perfect lives aren't so perfect because one, Junior's gay, which is an abomination. The daughter has had premarital sex and she's pregnant because they don't talk about sex or contraception. Their idea of contraception is you don't have sex until you're married. It's abstinence, which there's nothing wrong with that, but try telling a 15-year-old kid not to go out and have sex when their hormones are raging. Okay? So they don't even want to talk about sex, period. So a lot of people that are very devout are very ignorant when it comes to basic biology, when it comes to hormones, when it comes to sexuality. They have no idea what the hell's going on, because what they are told, if they even ask, if they're even brazen enough to ask, is you don't have sex until you're married. End of story. End of story. Anything else, that's Satan tempting you. Okay. But it's okay once you're married, but before that, you don't do it, period. Okay.
I also want to point out
bad.
One of the more sadistic things they do as well is there's a lot of times where kids will get interviewed by the elders about their sexual thoughts and fantasies.
Oh, okay. Let's
without
go there.
parents' involvement.
Yes, let's go there. Okay. So here's another thing that they do. This is where the church runs their lives. Okay. And this is their families. One of the big things with the church where you can say, I'm doing it right. You know, I'm doing it right. I'm closer to God. I'm doing it right. Is you need to be temple worthy. Okay. Because not just anybody can walk into the temple. Okay. There are areas where, yes, the general public can go into. Okay. But there are other areas that are verboten. They are off limits unless you have a temple recommend. Okay. Going back to the whole idea of family. Okay. Let's say, and I've seen this happen very recently, like within this year. I'm not LDS, but I have a daughter and she decided to be in the church, and I respect her choice. That's what you want to do. Okay, fine. And she is temple worthy because she's done everything that they tell her to do.
And that's everything like baptisms and tithing. They check
yeah. Your tithing better be current in order to be temple worthy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So she's, and we're going to get to the whole, what you were kind of alluding to just in a moment here. It ties in.
Yeah.
Okay? The whole talking kind of like a confessional in a way, an interview. Okay. This all ties in, but let me continue first, but we're coming back to that. Okay. So I have a daughter and she's LDS and she's paying her tithe and she's done everything she was told to do. And so she has an interview. Well, she meets a boy, first of all, young man who comes back from his mission. And he's 21. We'll say she's 20. She's an adult. They want to get married in the temple. Okay. Well, they have to have an interview with either like the stake president or the bishop. Somebody has to sit them down, and they're going to ask them a whole bunch of personal questions about their life. They are going to look at their tithing records. They are going to look at their attendance. They are going to ask them very personal things, such as, have you had sex? And not just with each other, but have you had sex, period?
Yeah.
Have you had premarital sex?
Do they include masturbation in that?
Yes.
I think they do. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a big one. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Have you ever masturbated? Have you ever thought about masturbating? Have you all these really deep personal questions they're going to be asked, and the parents are not there. The parents aren't there. This is between them and the bishop to get their temple recommend. And if the bishop or whoever's doing the interview is not satisfied with the answers, they won't get the temple recommend. They won't be able to marry in the temple. Okay. Usually what happens is either, and this is where it gets fun too. I've known plenty of young people who had premarital sex because they couldn't wait, but they still wanted to be married in the temple. So basically they lied and they got their temple recommend and then got married in the temple. And why is that a big deal? Because a temple wedding in the eyes of the LDS Church is kind of one of the highest things you can do, because
it's a celestial wedding, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And what that means is, unlike here where it's until death do you part, a celestial wedding is you are married for eternity. Okay. Even after death. And so your family is bound to you, both here on earth and in the afterlife, which to me brings up all kinds of questions that I honestly don't really have the answer to be honest, Conk. I don't know for sure, but it brings up the question of divorce. Okay. Yeah. So you were married in the temple, which in the eyes of the church means you're married for eternity. That's forever. So after death, you and your wife are going to be together again as husband and wife. Well, what happens when you got divorced in the real world? Does that cancel out the eternal wedding? Or does it mean, even though you guys divorced because I couldn't stand that son of a bitch,
yeah,
you know, whatever it is, but when you both die, guess what? You're back together again, you know? And same with your kids. Your kids are bound to you for eternity. Your kids have no say in the matter. It's, you know, this is their idea of family. Okay.
Yeah. And you can also see how this is a Beta Bucks Tradcon's wet dream.
Right? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And
that's why there's so many in the Mormon church.
And I'm going to go there in a second, but I wanted to finish up the whole thing with the temple ceremony, the temple wedding. Okay. So we have the weird, very intensely personal questions about what you've been doing with your sexuality. Are you gay? Have you had gay thoughts? Have you masturbated? When was the last time you did that? All that kind of stuff. Okay. Here's the other thing. Okay. And this is where, you know, they talk about, oh, we're all about family, except I'm the heathen that had the daughter. Remember that? This is my little hypothetical. I am not a member. Not only am I a heathen, I'm an apostate because I walked away. But I want to be there for my daughter's wedding day. I want to give her to her groom. I am not allowed in the temple because I am not temple worthy. I will not be a part of the actual ceremony. I can be part of the reception. I can be part of any type of ceremony they want to do after the fact, like in my house or even a standard church. But the actual ceremony, if they are going to be temple wed, I cannot be a part of. Their mother, unless she is also temple worthy, cannot be a part of the ceremony. And yet the church is supposed to be about family.
Yeah. as long as you take
as
the
long
living.
as long as you walk the line.
Yeah.
But if you don't, sorry, Dad, you cannot be a part of your daughter or your son. Doesn't matter. You cannot be a part of their wedding. You cannot give away your daughter. You cannot stand there and watch your son say his vows because you're not temple worthy, because either you walked away like I did, which I don't care, but maybe you're like my parents were, where they were still members. They just didn't practice. They didn't pay their tithe. Well, they're no longer temple worthy. Okay. In order for me to do that, I would have to get back into the church and all of that and start following all their policies and procedures and payments and everything else in order to be a part of my son or my daughter's wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is an abomination, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, why should I have to go through all of your stuff, especially if I don't believe it?
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to deny me my day with my children, which is one of their most special days of all time. You want to deny that because I don't believe what you believe. I can't even be in the same room with them.
Mm-hmm.
Where most other religions I've encountered, hey, you're welcome to come into our church and be a part of the wedding. Even you may not be, an active participant, but you can at least witness it. You can observe. Not in the LDS church, not if it's a temple wedding. Now, you just get married in the ward at one of the regular church houses. Yeah, that's fine. But that's not a temple wedding. That's not celestial sealing.
Yeah.
That's
It's
just
not super cool enough. Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
You're not high enough up in the food chain with that
Yeah.
one. So,
Yeah. And I mean, this all drags back. Our last Religion Zero episode was on the degeneracy of purity culture, because, and I think this is a perfect example where, essentially the hypothesis is the most like atrocious things that happen in humanity are done in the name of purity.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. They're done in the name of God. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, Hitler's concentration camps were to make his race more pure, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We got to do it's all. Yeah. We have to elevate the Aryan race. Yes.
Yeah. And so anytime somebody starts talking purity, whether it be sex, race, anything, that's when the most debauchery things happen. Right. Yeah. And that was kind of the whole, excuse me.
Oh,
that was kind of our whole pitch last time, was talking about once you start enforcing all of these rules, that's when the worst things start happening.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And I think that example in that Mormonism is like, that's their pride and joy is, mass control, like surveillance state level purity, and they want every part of your life.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But let's talk about that, because Heather brings up a question here. She said, "Could you buy your way in?" Yes, you kind of could. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's all about appearances, Heather. Okay, as long as you check all the boxes and you pay your tithe and you show up on Sunday, and nobody else knows what you're doing when you're not there, you're fine. Like I said, when I was mentioning the kids having the very personal interview, being asked questions about their sexuality, masturbation, sexual activity, I know plenty of people that just straight up lied. Just, oh yeah, we haven't had sex. We've waited. We're virgins. When in fact, no, they weren't. They just had sex 2 days before they went to see the bishop. Okay. And that's the point. The tighter they try to grip, you have the kids that do the hard rebellion and run. They just cut loose and usually leave the state. They cut ties with their family in a lot of cases because mom or dad or both try to reel them back in almost with force. Okay. Or they just pay lip service like I did for a long time before I finally just decided, nah, man, for me, myself, I need to be honest with me. And so I need to officially walk away. But for a lot of years, man, on the surface, oh, he's LDS. Yeah, I am on the books. But man, I drank, I drugged, I had premarital sex, you name it. As long as nobody saw it, it didn't happen. Okay. And that's the thing. There's a joke that goes around. How do you know two Mormons at the casino in Wendover? Because gambling's a big no-no. But an hour and a half on the Nevada border, we have Wendover where you can gamble. How do you know the Mormons from the other people? The Mormons glance at each other quickly and then look down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's, oh, I didn't see you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the same thing. How do you know a Mormon when they're in the liquor store? They won't make eye contact with anyone else.
Yeah.
You know, that way, I didn't see you and you didn't see me, but we'll see each other tomorrow on Sunday. You know, and we just won't talk about that. Yeah, we were both in the liquor store buying Jim Beam or Kraken or whatever. It's all appearances. And that's why, to me, I had a lot of disgust, because it's like, oh, you know, it's the bishop's daughter that got knocked up, and yet supposedly she should be damned for that, because that's a big sin. No, she's going to be fine. She just needs to, it's not the same as confession, but basically, as long as she just, you know, pays her tithe and makes extra, you know, prays to God a little harder, she'll be forgiven, you know. And it's like, okay, but then why is it a big deal to begin with? You know, if you're going to forgive her, then forgive her. But if you're not, you know, it's rules for thee, but not for me.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
And that's not the religion in and of itself. That's the people. But that was one of the things.
It's kind of the nature of, excuse me. It's kind of the nature of having like severe social hierarchies, you know, in general, is that the rulers get special privileges that you don't, but you still have to take your whippings, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's always at the expense of the commoner. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why I say that appearance is everything. Okay. And I've known, like I said, a lot of people that are very devout, that on the surface, man, they are doing Heavenly Father's bidding. Okay. They are doing the work, man. But then, like I said, you find out Junior's gay, the daughter's pregnant with some, you know, alpha random bad boy dude. Mom is on Prozac. Dad's drinking. I mean, heaven forbid, nobody's doing drugs and like street drugs.
Yeah.
You know,
they're just hammering the prescriptions. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, mom's on OxyContin, which is heroin. It's synthetic, but it is heroin.
Yeah.
You know, mom's on heroin, but as long as the state approved it, it's okay by the church too. So prescription drug abuse, oh no, that's not a thing. You know, no, that's not a thing. Now, drinking, on the other hand, yeah, that's bad. Okay. But so is caffeine. You know, these are the people that I've been in the church administrative building before, and I've been around their vending machines, and it's hilarious because they've got sodas in there. They've got Pepsi and Coke and Dr. Pepper and all that. They're all caffeine free. They are made specifically by whatever particular company, PepsiCo or Coca-Cola, whoever it is. They are made very specifically by that manufacturer for the church, because they're caffeine free. Because some of them, you can't get them anywhere but in this building. Okay. I've never seen caffeine free Dr. Pepper. Have you?
No, I don't think that exists.
But it does exist, and it exists in the church office. I've seen it exists there. Okay. It's because it's caffeine free. It's okay. They can drink it. Never mind that it's loaded with sugar.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the thing, that, you know, they did that. Caffeine is bad because it's a drug. You can get hooked on caffeine. Okay. Which is also why tobacco is bad, because you can get hooked on nicotine. Okay. So both are bad, but yeah, exactly. But nobody wants to address the elephant in the room, sugar. You know, that, oh, everybody in Utah, as long as it's caffeine-free coffee, you can drink your coffee. You can drink your diet soda or your regular soda as long as there isn't caffeine in it. But never mind that it has, you know, 300 grams of sugar in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, gee, you're going to tell me sugar's not addictive, and yet, oh, we don't talk about that one.
Yeah.
You know?
It's the kosher sins, right?
That's right. Hey, Brooke, what's up, bud? He popped in for a minute.
Yep.
So,
Brooke.
yeah, and that's it. It's kind of the kosher, you know, that there's different levels, that like the people that are very devout, once you've lived here long enough, you can tell the devout from the non, like the average person. Women are discouraged from wearing makeup. Okay. And so a very devout woman will not wear any kind of makeup at all, period. No eyeliner, no mascara, no rouge, no nothing. They are discouraged from wearing pants. Okay. Women are encouraged to wear dresses. Now, those dresses need to be a certain length for modesty. Okay. Basically below the knee, so calf length or longer, like right to the ground even.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything higher than the knee, you're pushing it. And when you start getting into like mini skirts and things like that, no. High heels, women are discouraged from wearing heels. Okay. So they wear flats, or they wear, I've seen women in skirts, again, appropriate length, below the knee, in skirts wearing tennis shoes. Okay. A lot of their clothing is handmade, which nothing wrong with that, but you can tell handmade from store-bought. The guys, all typically the devout guys, they typically wear suits. They're wearing some type of, maybe not quite a three-piece, but definitely a jacket, white shirt and tie type of thing with slacks. That's the standard attire. The church, going back to how I said it all starts with the family, for the boys especially, but even now the girls, you're expected to go on a mission. If you're going to be a good Mormon, you go on a mission. That's expected of you.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that reflects poorly on your family, on your parents, and you're not an apostate. You're not unredeemable. You're not a heretic, but it is definitely, you're a black sheep.
Yeah. And for the audience, if you guys don't know, when you see those guys with the name tags on their bicycles and pairs of two, that's
them. And when I come back, I want to talk about the missionaries real quick too.
Oh yeah, let's do that. But yeah, guys, this is a pretty deep dive into like the difference between polished, what you see, LDS, and like what actually goes down, right? And I think that's kind of my whole intention of this whole thing is it coincides so well with what we talked about last week on Religion Zero about purity culture, because I think the Mormon Church is the prime example of purity culture and all the crazy shit that happens behind the scenes, right? Once you start trying to do those like forceful oppositional controls of other people, it's going to come out in other ways. And I mean, all of Rob's stories, the stories I've seen as well, they're just prime examples of what happens when you try to socially enforce rules that were not made for humans. Last week we talked about vegan cats, and I think this is right in line with that. Once you try to make a cat a vegan, and it gets physically and mentally ill, right?
Vegan cats? What did I walk in on here?
Yeah, that's the analogy of like purity culture right now. Is you see all these people that are like hyper leftist or super into PETA, in that vegan culture, and they try to force their pets into a vegan lifestyle, but it makes the cat mentally.
Oh yeah, it screws them up. It actually they end up killing their cat. Yeah,
and that's exactly what purity culture is you're forcing all these rules on humans they weren't made for, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like there's a reason like you go through puberty and get boners and have sexual thoughts when you're 13.
Yes.
Because that's normal. But the fact that we're oppressing that and it comes out weirder, sketchier ways later on in life.
Oh yeah.
Because
your sexuality is not going to be denied. You are going to manifest it one way or another, whether you become a major artist or something and you kind of sublimate it into that, or God, you end up becoming some kind of a pervert pedophile. It's going to manifest one way or another. It will not be denied. Going back to the kids and the missionary thing and the surveillance state that you brought up. I like the term. It works. Here's one of the things, and like when I first started out saying that the LDS religion is blue pill, okay? It's not red pill, it's blue pill. And here's one of the things is you are raised in it, and I'm speaking predominantly to men, since I'm a man, you're a man. I'm imagining your show primarily, not that you don't cater to others as well, but you primarily cater to men. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm coming from a male perspective based on male experience for other men primarily.
Mhm.
So you're raised as a young man from a boy, and the church has told your parents that your salvation is on their heads. So you have that pressure from the get-go as a parent. So the parents tend to be, in most cases, fairly strict with the kids. Okay. And willful disobedience is usually not tolerated very well. It's the beginning of the clampdown. It's the totalitarian. It's the surveillance state. Well, you are steeped in church from the time you're little all the way up, well, all the way through your life if you follow the full course. Okay? But here's the thing. As a young guy, you get you hit puberty, you get your hard-ons, you have your sexual thoughts, and usually guilt is accumulated and goes along with it because it's Satan tempting you type of thing, even though it's normal and natural. Masturbation, there's the guilt and shame of masturbating in there. But the kid goes and he is expected, especially the boys, they are expected to go on a mission. That is your next, after baptism and being a deacon. That is like your next major ceremony. Is you're going to go on a mission. You're going to spread the word for the church, and you're going to do a solid for your parents. Okay. So you go on your mission. Well, one, the mission, you're paying for it yourself, or your family is. The church doesn't pay for your mission. Okay. You do it. It's out of your pocket. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you go on a mission, it's typically for about 2 years. I think they changed it not too long ago. I think they put it down to 18 months now for both men and women. And I'll talk about the girls in a second here, because at least when I was young, girls couldn't even go on missions. They weren't allowed.
Yeah,
Okay.
or they'd have a different activity they would call a mission, from my experience. But they didn't go in the door. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't do, but girls can be missionaries now.
Mhm.
Guys started originally at the age of 19 to 21. That was their window.
Mhm.
Okay. They started at 19 and finished up their mission by 21. Girls start at 21, or maybe it's 20, but I think it's 21. And their mission is shorter than a guy's. It's like, I think theirs is, from the word go, was 18 months. That's it. Okay.
Mhm.
Both parties, male and female, both genders, and there's only two, both genders, you have what is called a companion. Okay.
Mhm.
You are never left alone. You always have your companion with you. Okay. The only time that you have any privacy is when you go to the bathroom. That's it. Okay. That is the one time where your companion is not physically in the same room with you.
Mhm.
Otherwise, anywhere else, you have your companion with you. And when you first go on a mission, it's the greenie newbie that usually gets a veteran, that the veteran's getting ready to go home, actually.
Mhm.
And then you might actually go through a couple of them as they go back, circulate back into society type of thing. But if you are, walking the straight and narrow, you're always going to have a companion. And by the time you're getting ready to go home, you're the veteran, the senior guy, or whatever, the senior elder. You now have some greenie under you. Okay.
Mhm.
I've read a lot of literature written by men who were members and no longer are, and they talked about their missionary experience, which I can't speak from personal experience. I never got that far. I knew I was never going to be a missionary. It's like, yeah, right, whatever. I'm not doing that. Okay. But it's a competition to see who can get the most conversions to get the toaster oven, basically.
Mhm.
Okay. And guys would sometimes get sent home early because they broke rules, such as they had sex. They met some young girl while on their mission, and that evil whammon harlot fucking seduced him away.
How dare she?
How dare she? But yeah, he was tempted. And so now, he confessed to the missionary president, and they had to have a conference with some people, and yeah, it was decided you get to go home in shame. And so he's sent home. Well, when he gets home, even if he goes home with flags of honor, basically, he does everything right. He goes home and he goes back to church, and it's never explicitly implied. It's all implicit. It's all just understood that your next goal as a man is to get married. And so a lot of guys would have their high school sweetheart that they would write to while they were on their mission, and she was waiting for him while he was out doing the Lord's work. Okay. Well, a lot of those girls would be out doing all sorts of other extracurricular things while their boy was out doing the Lord's work. Okay. I knew quite a few that, again, you get back to that. If you're going to be temple worthy, ideally you need to be a virgin. I knew plenty of girls who were not. That it's like, yeah, okay, either you lied to the bishop when it was time to get your temple recommend, you either straight up lied, or you did whatever they told you needed to do, which was usually, okay, well, you admitted to me that you had sex. That's not ideal, but you now both have to wait 6 months. You need to abstain for 6 months. And then if you can do that, then we'll let you marry in the temple, because everything else, you're tithing and everything else is current. Okay. But you're told to get married, going back to the guy. So from a very young age, you're taught, I'm going to go on a mission. I'm going to do the Lord's work. And then I'm going to come home and I'm going to get married and I'm going to multiply and replenish the earth. Okay. Big families. Mormons have big families.
Yeah.
That's part of the deal. If you don't have X amount of kids, there's not a number, obviously, but the more kids, the better.
Yeah.
Okay?
You'll see a lot of families anywhere from like 4 to 12. Right?
Oh yeah. My ex-girlfriend came from, including her parents. She came from a family of 9.
Yeah.
Okay, 7 siblings, 2 boys, the others were all girls, and she was the eldest, and she was the apostate. She walked away from the church. Okay, caused a huge rift in the family, type of thing. And then of course she ends up, dating an atheist heathen like me, and I'm old enough to be her dad. Her dad and her mom and I were the same age. It was a hoot. Okay. Family get-togethers were always fun when I would go and do family stuff with her and her parents and shit. It was great. Yeah. So anyway,
Heather had a quick question on that, though.
Is it expected that one pursues a temple wedding, or is it a choice? It's everything is implicit, Heather. It's no one explicitly tells you. It's not written down in a book or in a journal or something somewhere that you are going to get married in the temple. Okay. There's no one that is not part of church doctrine that you're going to get married in the temple. It's expected, though. Okay. Yeah. It's all implied. It's all
it's more of that social pressure, right?
Yeah, it is, because you're part of the vice grip of the LDS Church is perfection, which we can never attain, but by God, we're going to try. Okay. The only person that anyone that's LDS will admit that was perfect was Jesus. In their eyes, Jesus was perfect. God is perfect. We are not. And we know that, but there's no real forgiveness for, hey, you screwed up. I mean, there is, but there's tremendous pressure to not screw up. There's tremendous guilt and shame if you do. And that's why the SSRIs, the antidepressants, are so prevalent. That's why suicide is so high, even though suicide is kind of one of the ultimate sins. That is another one, if I recall correctly, and I could be wrong, Conk. You might know more about this, but I could swear that suicide was one of the ones that in addition to turning your back on God, walking away from the word would cast you into outer darkness. Suicide was another one that if you killed yourself, you were cast out.
Yeah, it varies by denomination.
God's plan. Yeah, you're going against God's plan. You're cheating God out of his plan for you. And therefore you're automatically you're heretical, you're apostate, you're cast out now. Okay. I seem to recall that was one of the ones in the LDS Church too, is that if you killed yourself, you're done. Okay. we haven't really talked about the origins of the LDS, John. I know a little bit of it, again, from my experience. You know, it's Joseph Smith. He was a seeker. He went through a whole bunch of religions when he was very young and couldn't find a fit. And then supposedly he had a vision, and it was originally it was the angel Moroni came and paid him a visit and told him that God was its own entity and that Jesus Christ was a separate entity. And then the next visit he had was from God and Jesus simultaneously, that both entities, and he saw them according to his testimony, his word, he saw them in physical form. They weren't just like a burning bush or a glowing light or something like that. He actually
like
saw what they looked like. Yeah, he was out in the woods and he saw them in physical manifestation. And then the next visit was the angel Moroni showed up again and brought him the Book of Mormon, which was a bunch of golden plates that were
special glasses, right?
Well, yeah, and the special glasses were actually stones. They were rocks. Okay, Uman and Thurman, or Thurmanen, or something like that. I can't remember the pronunciation, but there were these rocks that how he read them is he would put the plate in a hat, put the rocks in the hat, and then stick his head in the hat in the dark. And then he had someone transcribing what he was translating, apparently. Yeah. And the writing, from what I remember, was more or less was hieroglyphs, was kind of what it ended up being. And then, of course, once he was done translating it, the angel Moroni took the book back up into heaven, which is why there is no golden plated book laying around somewhere. Which brings me to another thing where I have another dispute, I guess, with the LDS Church. Okay. In the Holy Bible, there are references to physical locations like Israel, Galilee, Judea, other places that physically existed and or still exist to this day. You can go there as, say, a non-believer like me, as an archaeologist, and you can dig around and you can find things that you can carbon date that go back to time periods that are written about in the Holy Bible. And so you can say, well, maybe these events may or may not have happened, but civilization existed in this area during the time that it was written about in this area. Okay. There is none of that for the Book of Mormon, because the Book of Mormon basically is saying that after Jesus died and was resurrected, he also came over to the North American continent.
Yeah.
Which, as far as I know,
like the Aztecs.
Well, and it wasn't the Aztecs. There was the, I'm trying to remember, there's two races.
Well, their origins. Yeah.
Yeah, there was basically white people was one, which were if you're here, you know, even technically you, Conk, you're a descendant of these ancestors that from back in the day. But basically there was white people and then there was not white people, brown, black, whatever. They were the other ones. These were the heathens and the white people were the saved. They were the chosen. They were the what are the descendants of the Mormons, you know, what are the Mormons today, basically. Mm-hmm. There was all this civilization and technology that was appropriate for that time period. There was great wars. You look at the pictures that were drawn and whatnot. They had, you know, the Bronze Age existed, the Age of Steel existed, all of that. That these were not, you know, Neanderthal rock throwing, spear chucking dudes. These were people that had civilization, and yet they had all these great wars. And yet there's not one shred of physical evidence that any of that ever happened here. And the answer, when I've asked that question, this is one thing that I've always gotten into debates with missionaries and even people of other denominations. This is one of the things where I tend to get into discussion, debate, even sometimes arguments with them. Mm-hmm. Is I will ask, like the LDS, I'll be like, so explain the lack of evidence of all these different wars and stuff that happened here in North America. Where's all these ancient civilizations? They're not here. We're not finding metal and steel and stuff that you could carbon date to go back to this time period that Joe Smith said happened. Mm-hmm. What happened? Okay. The Bible, at least, hey, we can carbon date things and find things that, well, it fits the time period. So yeah, it could have happened, but not with the Book of Mormon. Well, the answer is, well, God took it all up into heaven.
Every dead body, every piece of
Yeah,
pot,
it took it all.
artery.
Took it all. Yeah,
Yeah.
all the corpses are gone, all the pottery, the tapestries, everything. It's all gone. The bricks, everything. It's all gone. Oh,
Yeah.
God took it into heaven. Which is the same argument I get into with them when I'm like, they're like, we're the one true faith. They do a thing called testimony. They testify. They go and stand before the congregation. And I believe the church is true because I had questions and I asked God. I prayed to God and I got a funny feeling in my stomach, which told me that is true. Okay. Which, whatever. All right. It's not very scientific, but okay.
Yeah.
But it's a feeling based religion. Okay. Everything's based on, well, I got this feeling because the Holy Ghost came in and made my stomach tingle. Okay.
Yeah.
That's how I knew this guy was for me, because I got butterflies in my stomach. I knew this girl was for me because I got tingles in my stomach, because I prayed to the Holy Ghost and the Holy Ghost told me, yep, that's for you. All right. But the thing is, when I've asked him, how do you know any of this is true? I get the same patented answer every time. Well, you just have to have faith. And for me, I'm sorry, guys, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
That's not good enough for me.
Exactly.
That's why I am atheist. I'm not saying that if you can show me empirical proof that God exists, hey, I'll change my mind right now. But nobody has been able to show me empirical proof.
Yeah.
And
I think that's normal.
that's why I choose not. But their fallback answer is, well, you just have to pray and it's a feeling you get. And I'm like, oh, it's a feeling. Well, who else practices that in modern day times? The left, feminism.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying that the LDS religion is not red pill. It's very blue pill. Like I said, I see so many guys that their whole lives get ripped out from under them because they did everything by the script. They were a good boy. They got baptized at 8. They were a deacon at 12. They joined the priesthood at like 15. They went on a mission at 19 and became an elder. They came back. They married their sweetheart. They procreated and have this big family. They go to church. They do all the church activities, which I say, these are daily things. These are not just on Sunday and that's it.
Yeah.
And then one day, the wife decides, I'm not happy, and divorces him. Or he finds out, and I'm not trying to shit on women here because guys do the same shit, but it's typically the guys that are the idealists and tend to be the most blind to what's going on. The women kind of all know. And guys like me that are the heathens that I walked away and I see the girls doing what they're doing. It's like, it's women's nature. That's girls are going to be girls. This is what they do. But the guys have no idea that, your Puritan wife, your pure wife of driven snow, not so much. She was at a party 2 weeks before and she was drinking and drugging and she went into a bedroom with some dude and came back out readjusting her clothes. So do the math, but the husband has no idea. The boyfriend has no idea because he's that naive.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of naivety here because they are actively encouraged or they're actively discouraged to not read, watch, listen to anything that is critical of the church. And so they live in a bubble. They really do. And when the guys get hit with reality, when divorce happens or an affair happens, it devastates them. Because this isn't what was supposed to happen. Everyone told me from the time I was little that if I just do what they tell me, everything's going to work out all right. And the reality is it didn't. And I've seen guys kill themselves over it. I've seen guys that are emotionally devastated from it, financially devastated from it. I mean, it's kind of typical in a lot of different religions. No one religion's immune to it, but it's really pronounced here compared to other faiths that also occupy Utah. It's like some of them have more resources or maybe a better grip of reality, I guess, where the guys are a little more in tune that, women are going to do what they're going to do. Guys are going to do what they're going to do. And so a lot of other faiths, I've noticed the guys tend to have a little more social support, because once a divorce happens, you're kind of cut off from the church, because divorce is so frowned on that the church kind of turns its back on you. And so when that's your whole life, is your family and your church, and someone in the family just ripped your family apart, usually you would hope and think that the church is going to be there to help you. And more often than not, the church turns its back on you.
Yeah. And I think all of that really, to me, it all comes down to, like, we've always talked about, in the manosphere, talking about the burden of performance. But
the church, the LDS Church, takes that to the nth degree. I'm telling you what.
Yeah.
You are told to be a plow horse. You are a plow horse in the LDS Church.
Yeah. And I think that's where the biggest problems arise is, if the burden of performance exists, are you doing it for yourself? Are you performing for yourself? Or are you performing for a bigger entity, right?
And with the LDS Church, you are performing for a bigger entity.
Yeah. So in that note, you're literally a slave to them, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You're the yoked ox and the saddled horse instead of you being yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's the thing. That's why, like I said right at the beginning when we first started, and I said that not only is the LDS Church not red pill, there are guys who are red pilled that happen to stay religious because they went through some kind of a trauma, whether divorce, an affair, whatever it might be. They figured out their own mental point of origin. They still somehow reconciled their faith with it. I don't know how they did it, because usually it's hard to do it, because you are not your own person in the church. You are there to be the provider for your family. Yeah, you're the patriarch, whatever you want that to mean. But the reality is the state is still the true patriarch, because
it's a participation trophy when they call you the
patriarch. It is, absolutely. Yeah. But you can get that until your wife decides you're no longer the patriarch. Okay. And that's just the way it rolls. That's one of my biggest things against the LDS Church, is you are not taught to be your own man, because you're raised by the church, and typically by the women, because it is the women who predominantly fill the pews. Okay. Whether they want to acknowledge it or not, they're not as blatant about it as some forms of Christianity, but being the head of the house is literally, it's a title. You don't have authority, not really. The wife runs the house. And let's talk about polygamy. Let's bring that up. Okay. Let's talk about that. Even though the LDS mainstream recognized religion does not practice it, they denounce it. There is the fundamental Latter-day Saints, the FLDS, which are the fundamentalists. They go back to the original Book of Mormon. Okay. These are the ones that still practice polygamy. Polygamy isn't what a lot of people think it is. A lot of guys seem to think that, polygamy is basically a harem. It's one guy and he's got, 7 wives, and, he's Hugh Hefner and he's banging all of his wives in the same bed in the same night. No, that's not how this works at all. Okay. In the LDS Church, especially in the fundamental church, that still openly, well, it's not open because it is against the law, but in their own isolated communities, they openly practice polygamy. Okay. You're the man, but you are the provider. The women typically don't work, and you have 7 wives. Well, you got to provide for every one of them, and all of your children. Well, that's expensive. Okay. A lot of times the church subsidizes that. That's the same even in mainstream LDS. If you're a good upstanding member and you need like money or food, the church will help you out, but you need to be an upstanding member. Anyone else off the street, some homeless guy wants food, goes to an LDS church and says, "Can you help me out?" They will give him the address to the local mission or the food bank, or to, say, the Catholic diocese that's around here. Go talk to them. Unless you're a member. Then if you're a member, we'll help you. But otherwise, go talk to these people. We will not help you. Okay. So much for, acting Christian. So much for what would Jesus do? Okay. That's just a reality. If you're not a member, you're not going to get any real help. Like I said, they might refer you somewhere else, but they will not help you. Okay. They help their own, but they will not help outsiders. And that's fine, but it just, to me, it kind of goes against the whole concept of what it is to be Christian. Okay. Isn't it supposed to be love your brother and help thy neighbor type of thing? Well, yeah, only if you're in good standing and you're a member, then we'll help you. Otherwise, or if we're going to try and convert you, then the missionaries will come and help you rake leaves or whatever conk.
Yeah, I got those Mormons to help me move after I left that house. They came and,
they'll help, but as soon as you let them know I'm not converting, but once you know that I'm not converting, they'll go away, because that's what happened when I moved into my home. Within 3 days of me moving in, the missionaries showed up at my door, and they wanted me to, hey, you a member, blah blah blah. Well, I told him a half truth. I was like, yeah, I'm one of the flock guys, because at that point I hadn't had my name removed from the books. And so technically I was a member. It hadn't practiced in 30 years, but I was technically a member. And so they were like, oh, okay, well, that's great. Never heard from him again. Oh, well, he's one of us. We don't need to worry about him. So we're not going to waste our time, even though I could have been like, hey guys, I could use some help, moving my fridge around or something, kind of like what you did.
Yeah.
But it's, you're taught to be a provider. You're taught to obey. Okay. You are taught to bend the knee. The last time I was in a church for a church ceremony, a church sanctioned event, was when I was with my ex-girlfriend, because her family's very devout, and her sister, who was the next oldest sister in the family, was going on a mission. It's called a farewell. Okay. So they had a big to do at the church, and of course my ex-girlfriend wanted to be there, and I'm fine with that. I'm like, hey, that's your family. And I was like, am I welcome or no? Because if I want to be there to support her, it's like, I'm here for you. If you want me to be there, I'll go. If you don't want me to be there, I won't. It's no big deal to me. But she's like, yeah, I'd like you to come. It gives you a chance to meet my my family a little more than just my parents. So I went, and I remember we're sitting there, and of course, the sister and a couple other missionaries in that particular city, they were all getting ready to be shipped out. They all stood up and gave their testimony. This is the one true church, and yada, yada. But then I remember the stake president, who's a bit higher than the bishop. The bishop is kind of the head of that particular brick and mortar church. Okay. The stake president is over him. He's over several churches, is what he is. Okay. The stake president was there. So it was kind of a big deal that, wow, we got one of the high brass here today. Okay. Well, the stake president was there, and he got up at one point and gave a little sermon. And his big part was the lesson was, you need to obey. You need to obey God. You need to obey your elders. You need to obey your mother, your father. You need to obey. And I remember when I heard that, I physically recoiled in my chair.
Yeah.
Because that's
very
one of the big, because that's one of the reasons I walked, was like, whoa, no. No, I'm not bending the knee just because you said so. You want me to obey, you better give me a darn good reason why I should. And it shouldn't just be because, well, it's written. No, not buying it. And that is the premise. That is the backbone of the church right there. That when you dig deep enough, it's about obedience. It's about conformity. It's about bending the knee. And it is, for guys especially, you are a plow horse.
Yeah.
And you're not just a plow horse for your family, for your own, which that one I don't have an issue with. It's like, yeah, I take care of mine. I take care of what is mine. Okay. But you're there to also be the plow horse for God. You're there to be the plow horse for the church. If they call on you to do service, whatever that service may be, you can be assured that you're not going to be reimbursed for it. Not financially, not in any worldly sense here. Oh yeah, you're getting heavenly credits to God, but you're not getting anything here, but we're taking you from your family to go do something else for the church. We need walls painted. We know you're a painter. Well, come over here and paint these walls. Okay. And they say, yet we're about family, but okay, the husband just got pulled away from his family. Not explicitly, but it's all implied. It's that social pressure. Okay. And guys are raised to not say no. And even the girls, they're raised to not say no. That is a sign of defiance. That is a sign of disobedience.
Yeah.
That was a big thing that my ex-girlfriend went through with her family, that she was willful. It's like, yeah, what 13-year-old girl isn't? It's just like 13-year-old boys. Yeah, they're willful. It's what happens. But man, it was to be stamped out. And that's why she ultimately broke away entirely from it, because it's like, I want to be my own person. I want, free will, mom, free will, dad. You guys talk about it, but yet you don't allow it. Because ultimately it's all implied that, yeah, you have free will. People talk about it all the time. Free will to choose. And yet you're people look down their nose and they will ostracize you. That reminds me, something that happened recently that was very common here, that I just grew up with it and it was pretty normal. My dad, about a week ago, he was looking at different medical providers. He was trying to find a new doctor. And I initially was like, is there a problem? Is there something I need to know about? Do you got a health issue going on? I mean, my dad's 70 years old. Okay. Oh, no, that's not why I'm looking for a doctor. I'm fine. Okay. Well, why are you looking for a doctor? What's going on? Well, my doctor is leaving. Oh, okay. Well, did he tell you why? Yeah. He's leaving the state of Utah because his children are being persecuted. What do you mean? Well, his kids aren't being allowed to play with the other kids in the neighborhood because this doctor and his children are not LDS.
Yeah.
That is normal. I grew up with that. I remember a kid, his name was Steven Sadler. He was the only Catholic in my elementary school. And great guy, great family. I played with Steve because at that point, I really wasn't that close to the church anymore. But other kids did not, because the parents told them, because what faith you were mattered. And if you weren't LDS, yeah, we don't really want anything to do with you, because your kids, you might corrupt our children. It's all implied. It's all done with a smile. Oh, hey, oh, well,
Yeah.
Instead of just being straight up like, basically, we think you suck because you're not one of us.
Yeah, exactly.
And that still goes on to this day. That's the norm.
Yeah. It also happens in the adult playground too.
Yes.
I had a good friend named Brother Eric. We were coworkers together and we just became friends in Colorado when we worked at a Pentecostal church. And he moved and started working as a youth pastor in Utah. And the majority of their people at their, Pentecostal is a Protestant, denomination. A lot of their church were people who got excommunicated from Mormonism, right?
Yes.
And you'd hear sob story after sob story of people who left the Mormon church and then went bankrupt because they would all start blacklisting their businesses there.
Yes.
Like if you're a Mormon, you only go to Mormon plumbers and Mormon grocery stores.
Yeah. Well, and that's just like we have, under the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights and all of that, we have separation of church and state. Okay. Utah, it's a blurred line.
Yeah.
And I say that because most of the lawmakers are devout members of the church.
Yeah.
And they will toe the party line. Whatever the church pretty much suggests. They won't straight up tell them you need to do this, that, or the other. No, they can't do that. But they will heavily encourage and heavily suggest, well, alcohol's bad, so maybe we need to raise the taxes on it. And it will happen.
Yeah.
If the church suggests it, the members will obey. And that includes the lawmakers. And so there's a very thin line between church and state in Utah. And that's because the majority of the lawmakers, the people in power here, they're all LDS. They're all LDS. Okay. That's just how it is. I want to say the governor of the state of Utah is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Gary Herbert. Okay. And that's the norm. That's Utah. That's just how things are here. The persecution, like you say, the blacklisting of companies, the denial of children being able to play with other children. That is normal here. The only way you can avoid a blacklist in a lot of cases is if you have a business that is necessary and you're pretty much the only one around doing it.
Yeah.
Then they'll make exceptions for the most part.
And if you're a large chain, usually you're okay because people go to the big chains.
Oh yeah.
But if you're a mom and pop
their
store
chains,
and you leave, you're done.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you're a big chain, you're kind of immune. And people will, again, it's that they look down, they avert their gaze, oh, hey, Kong's here. Oh, look down. Kong didn't see me. I didn't see him. And so on Sunday, it never happened when we were in the heathen store, But if you're a mom and pop outfit, unless whatever you have is kind of necessary to your community, if you're not part of the flock, man, you're done. They just won't frequent you.
Yeah.
Yep. You'll be out of business. You'll be done within a year. You'll be bankrupt and out of business within a year. Because they keep tabs on who's part of the faith and who isn't. That's like the FLDS communities. They're isolated and insulated enough that it is very difficult as an outsider to get in because they all, the sheriff is one of them. The mayor of the town is one of them. All of the businesses are owned by them, and they trade and buy and sell from each other. It's very incestual in a lot of ways. And so you trying to come into one of those communities like in Hilldale, that's a good example. That's Atham, look that up. It's a place, I think it's either in Colorado or it might be on the border of Utah. I forget where it's at, but it's a polygamous community. It's FLDS. Okay. Yeah. Well, everybody that's in that community is part of the church, and they're all insiders. And some of the people in there, some of the guys, they're very wealthy because they're contractors. They do building work outside of the community for other communities, kind of like Big D Construction or some of these other type of big contractors. But they are the only ones nearby that can do it. But they have the equipment. They have the ability. They can build great buildings. And so they can charge good money, and that's how they build their own homes, their mansions. That, going back to polygamy, the women, you have what is called the first wife. This is the one that is on your marriage license that the state recognizes. Any other wife is a private ceremony. Okay, because otherwise it's bigamy. And even though I saw someone said, Tiger Jin said, Utah recently made polygamy a misdemeanor. It used to be a felony. Okay. Yeah. They've decriminalized it to a degree. Okay. But it's still technically a crime, even as a misdemeanor. Okay. And again, it's all about appearances. You don't want the state paying attention to you. So you got to fly under the radar. Yeah. So all of your additional marriages are private ceremonies. There's no state license involved. Okay. But the first wife is the head bitch in charge. Okay. She actually has a say in who you marry if you take on more wives. It's not like other religions where the women, hey, suck it up. I'm the man. I'm the patriarch. I'm going to decide who I marry, and I don't care what you think. The first wife has dibs. She has a say. And if she says no, then you're not marrying that woman. Okay. The first wife decides who you as the man sleep with. Okay. You come home from working at your contractor job or whatever it is you do, and oh, tonight I'm supposed to be with Debbie. Is that all right, first wife? Yeah, I'm good with that. So then you go to the room or the house sometimes that
Yeah.
Debbie lives in.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Is you have multiple houses, and some of them have tunnels.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Depending on how
Yeah.
mainstream your family's in. Yeah.
Yeah, you go underground and go from the house here to the next door house, which is where your second wife lives and her children are. I mean, the family as a whole, the husband and wives communally raise the children. All of the children are raised by all of the wives and the husband. But the wives themselves, they interact. Don't get me wrong. They know who each other are, and they may cook together and do household projects, sewing, washing, all of that kind of stuff. Your domestic duties, the wives will all get together. But when it comes to sex, the wives, they are either in separate bedrooms or in separate homes in a lot of cases. And the husband has to clear it with the first wife. Okay. That's why, when guys, think that, oh, polygamy, I can be Hugh Hefner and I got my harem and I can bang any chick I want and bring them all in the house. Yeah, no, that's not how polygamy works in Utah. That's not how the Mormons view polygamy. It's very matriarchal. You may get to decide, I want to marry her, and then I want to marry that one over there. You can express the interest, but it's the first wife that ultimately still has the final say. She can veto it. She can tell you no, and it can be for any reason. It could be, wow, she's younger, hotter, tighter than me. No. You're not marrying her. She's got to give you a damn good reason, but she can veto you. Okay. So much for the patriarchy. And that's the thing that I've even seen documentaries and whatnot from some of these communities. And other than some of the real sensational ones where it's like, yeah, this is kind of like reality TV shit here. The ones that are a little more legit and genuine. Yeah, he's the head of the household, but it's only in title. He is the plow horse. Yeah. And he does whatever the wives tell him to do. Yeah, in public, he may say, we're going here. And the wives go, yes, sir. And they follow him into the building. Okay, but that's about it. His authority ends there. When he's home, he's got a honey-do list. He's fixing the ceiling. He's fixing the leaky toilet. He may have dinner waiting for him when he gets home because he's only one man until his boys get old enough to start contributing to the heavy labor. Yeah. But if he's got a bunch of young children around, it's all on him, man. And I'm looking at that going, screw that.
Yeah.
Screw that, man. No thanks.
I like keeping my money. Thank you.
Keeping my money and keeping my sanity. It's like, dude, you're going to be physically exhausted by the time you're 45. You're going to look like you're 80 because you spent your whole life toiling. And it's like, screw that. Yeah. So it's not the Mecca that some would have you believe, guys. I've seen guys on Twitter. I saw one just recently, like yesterday. There was talk of the evils of alcohol. And I was like, oh, great. Prohibition is alive and well on Twitter. And even Ryan Stone got involved. And he's like, yeah, that guy, he actually has alcohol problems. So you know what? Good on him for quitting. And I agree with that. It's like, yeah, if booze is a problem, then don't do it. But don't broad stroke it for everyone else that doesn't have a problem. Let people make their own decisions. But someone else in the thread had mentioned something about, Islam, wouldn't stand for this, and neither would the Mormons. And this same guy who was demonizing alcohol goes, yeah, Islam and the Mormons got a lot right. And I'm sitting there going, well, here's the peak ignorance right here. Yeah. Anyone who says, that, oh yeah, that particular faith, they got it right. And it's like, you have no idea, dude. It's like, please come talk to me. I will set you straight because I've grown up in it. I've lived in it my entire life. And it's like, it's not this red pill Mecca that's going to save the West. Utah. Well, and that's when with the whole thing with the pandemic and Black Lives Matters and the election, all the crap that's been going on in 2020, I've had a lot of people, well, what's it like in Utah? It's like, well, we had a little bit of a protest early on with the whole George, what's his name, that downtown Salt Lake got burned a little bit. There was some damage, but that's because downtown Salt Lake's very liberal. Okay, it's very left. All right, so the police were told to stand down, and so the joggers and the looters and the rioters did their thing for a minute, but then order was restored. But Utah's not this Wild West, don't tread on me, Second Amendment state that a lot of people think it is.
Oh no, it's super oppressive. Yeah.
Well, it's Utah is statist. Okay. Yes, we are pro Second Amendment. Yes, you can have your guns. Yes, people pack a lot of guns around here. More of the standard population is armed than not. Okay, not arguing that. I enjoy that. That's part of why I like living here. Hey, everybody's packing. Okay, but Utah is also bend the knee. They're very statist, that whatever either the church tells them or the state tells them, they are going to put on their mask.
Or what the church tells the state to do.
Exactly. Whatever the church tells the state to do, the citizenry is going to bend the knee and put on their masks like good little sheep. Okay. Utah is a police state. It really is. The number of police officers we have per capita is higher than most of the rest of the country. Okay. Yeah. So if you don't mind being oppressed, come and live in Utah.
Yeah.
Okay. But we are not the Wild West. We are not, don't tread on me and me and my Second Amendment rights. It's like, you have your Second Amendment rights because the state and the church told you you could. And so we are not some Mecca. Now, on the other hand, Utah is a great place to raise a family because we don't have a nightlife, really. They roll up the sidewalks early. And on Sunday, good luck in buying alcohol anywhere. Okay? Even the grocery stores, good luck. And so if you want to have a life, if you want to just raise kids and that's it, Utah's not a bad place.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you want to have a life of your own, whether your kids are grown up or you haven't got them, or you're choosing like me not to have children, you could do a lot better than Utah. Okay. That's just from, my take that, no, Utah's not the Mecca of saving the West, guys. Nope. The religion here is cucked. It really is. So,
yeah, that's a good note to end on. Do you got any final thoughts here?
What
would you say to the audience?
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Conk, thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed this. I'm not here to convince anyone to follow any one religion or another. To me, that's between you and God, if that's what you believe in, or that's your own choice. So you choose what works for you. I'm not here to convince you of one or another or anything at all. All I'm doing is telling you what I know from what I grew up with, what I see on a daily basis. If anything, it's just to bring awareness and some education to a lot of people that don't really understand what goes on in Utah and what the LDS faith is actually about. Because you're going to get a lot of people that are very pro LDS, and of course they're going to puff up the religion. You're going to get a lot of people that have no idea whatsoever, that never grew up in it, never lived in it, that are going to be like, oh yeah, the LDS, the Mormons are red-pilled. And it's like, whatever, dude. No, the guys here are plow horses. They are good little beta boys told what to do. And they start with mom at the knee and the church through the rest of their lives. And when things don't work out, as life tends to happen, they are devastated from it because they are raised in ignorance. They are raised in, don't look outside of the church for the answers to what is going on in life. You need to just focus on the doctrine and focus on your own, and you'll be just fine until reality rips the fabric out from underneath them. And that's probably my biggest beef is it's like so many young guys that could actually be better guys for themselves because they were taught their own mental point of origin. They were taught, hey, what's in this for me? If it works for you, great, God bless. But most people, this is handed down from generation to generation. They've never been taught to question it. So they just do it because that's what they've always done. They're actively discouraged from questioning it.
Mm-hmm.
You're bad, you're being tempted, you're wrong if you question. And that is oppression. That is tyranny.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And that I have a hard time with that. So
Amen.
thank you for having me on. Guys that are watching, that have been here, thank you for, asking the questions and for tuning in and listening. Thanks for your patience, for my rambling, all of that kind of stuff. Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, and my final thoughts here for the Christians in the crowd, what should we learn from this? I think the biggest takeaway when you study LDS is it is like an obvious example of what purity culture does to you and oppression does to you. Is you like Rob said, it will eventually turn into a police state, and you'll see a lot of crazy backhanded, even though the front looks nice and squeaky and well polished, the background is fucked up.
Yeah,
right?
it's all under the rug. All the stuff that goes on in other communities across the nation, across the world, as far as I'm concerned. All the stuff, the drinking, the whoring, the cheating, the drugs, you name it, all the stuff that you see going on, it happens here too. It's just all swept under the rug. That's it. It's just, they just cover it up and cover it over. And that didn't happen, even though, everybody knows it did, but nobody talks about it.
Exactly.
That's all.
And and remember, the actual scripture of the Bible says there's a universal priesthood, which means everyone is an equal standing and no person has any spiritual hierarchy or authority over anyone else. So as soon as somebody does say that, they're wrong and get out of Dodge. Be your own man, live what God wants you to do, not what other people tell you to do. Fuck the church, fuck the system, all of that stuff.
Yes.
Amen. All right.
Amen. I'll go with that. I'll agree with you there. Yes. Do what you got to do for you.
Yep.
So.
All right. Everyone, have a good one.